Welcome to Northwest Tech Show. I'm Dave Duncan, and this is a show where we talk about technology and how a better understanding of it can help you have better outcomes at home, at work, and in your civic engagements. We're going to kick things off, as we like to do, with a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at Twit TV.
This is Twit.
Google is very much in the news today. In fact, the biggest story really should be in the changelog, but I'm not going to bury the lead here. This morning, I got up early and signed up for Passkeys. Google has turned on Passkeys for your Google accounts. This is the new passwordless technology that the FIDO Alliance has been rolling out. Google, Apple, many other companies, kind of saying they support it. And what you do, if you go to your Google account, your account is protected. If I go into the security settings, it will say and you can see, you can show this. There's nothing to hide. I added a passkey at 6:09 this morning. And, you already recognized it, it says. So I don't care. I want to see it. New passkey added to your account. If you didn't add passkey, somebody may be using your account, iPhone. So now my iPhone is my Google login. And all I have to do when I want to log into Google is do the biometrics on the iPhone, in this case, Face ID. And I'm logged in. No password required. No second factor required. And a number of people have said, do you really want that? This isn't that new because I notice I have other passkeys. I have a total of 4 passkeys on my account. And the reason being, and look at this. I guess I do have to still do a password. So the reason being, when I got my Google Pixel and my Samsung, they kind of were added as the single sign-on masters of my account. So, but some people complain that the issue is, what if you lose your phone?
Right.
I think the best
That's one issue I had, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, don't.
Because
do they have like recovery codes?
Yes.
Yeah. How do
you have all the same. You're not giving up any of the other ways you had to log into Google.
Okay. So you still
adding
have a password to your account, right?
Yeah, you still have all of that stuff. But the risk if you lost your phone and it wasn't locked or somebody could figure out your screen, and of course the Wall Street Journal's been going crazy over this. I don't know how legit it is that, oh my God, people are shoulder surfing you, getting your login and then stealing your life, and they have like 3 people this happened to. I don't think it's that common. Yeah.
Wait, I didn't even have to say it. Thank you, Ann.
Yeah,
didn't even have to say it.
Or if you stole my phone with it unlocked, like I unlocked it and then I put it down on the bar and then you just snarfed it and kept it unlocked. Well, at that point, but see, you still need the Face ID. When I go to Google, I still got to do the Face ID.
Surfing?
Shoulder surfing my passcode to get into the phone.
Like looking over your shoulder to see the...
Yeah, you've never heard that phrase? Yeah.
No, that's...
yeah, that's why, you can thank shoulder surfing for the dots that you always get when you're trying to enter a password and you can't see what you're entering. That's to prevent shoulder surfing.
So if I'm logging into my Gmail account on the web on my computer, what the process for me then looks like, I then pick up my phone and...
Well, that's always been here. Yeah. You've probably seen that when you go to your Google account, after you enter the password, the 2-factor can also be logged into your phone. You've seen that, right? Yeah.
I have 2-factor on my...
Right.
So I'm just trying to figure out what the normal
this eliminates that
experience with this is.
I think that will eliminate the password part. So I've been trying it in different ways. It did not happen here. One of the ways, on one of my systems, I got a QR code, which I then had to use on the passkey-enabled device to enable the new device. But I notice here that they want my
QR code with your iPhone?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's in theory how Passkeys would work if you went. So let's say you sign up for the Macy's site. It could show you a QR code, which you would then use your passkey. Your phone is now your passkey, right? Your phone has this passkey store, and you would then scan the QR code. The phone would do Face ID or Touch ID, and Macy's would let you in without a password. That's the idea.
Is that the equivalent of doing sign in with Google? So Google's going to now know exactly where I'm signing in if I sign in with
that's an interesting the privacy question. I didn't even think of that.
Right. is it stored on device or is this cloud-based? That was my question.
So not all passkeys go through Google.
Okay.
Passkeys is not a Google thing. It's a FIDO Alliance thing.
Right. But if Google is running...
No, in fact, even when I log in with passkeys to Google, iCloud stores the key, not Google. So the device stores the key. And Apple does not know what I have in my passkey storage. No, that would violate the whole process. That's a secure.
So basically, Google's now allowing this passkey to be used to sign into its sites.
Yes, and if you use a Google phone, it's a secure enclave on the Google phone, but it doesn't get passed on to Google, I don't think. No. I'm sure it doesn't.
Got it.
That would mean it's not secure. It'd be stupid.
May I add something here?
Yes.
That's not it. Guess why I'm mad? Guess why Jeff is mad?
Oh, because you have a worksheets account, whatever it's called, workplace account.
Oh, right.
And does it not work with that?
No. Oh. And so it says, well, see, you're administrator. Well, I'm the administrator. Where's Amir? And then I go and I try to search for workplace or whatever the hell it's called this week and passkey, and there's nothing. There's not like even out of luck, sucker, or wait, or nothing. I'm the second-class citizen again, Google.
So
something like this seems like it should roll out to workspace first before rolling out to the regular folks like me, right?
Right. In fact, at our school, we were not compliant, and everybody in the whole school had to do two-factor so we could be compliant with Google's standards for higher security. And so what they have is on what they would, I guess, argue are lower standards now. Pisses me off, Google.
So long. This is the Google blog, Google security blog post. So long passwords. Thanks for all the fish. Little tip of the hat to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Starting today, you can create and use passkeys on your personal, not workspace, personal Google account. When you do, Google will not ask you for your password or two-step verification when you sign in. In a way, this is like a YubiKey or a hardware security key. The difference is with the hardware security key, I can have you should have a backup key in the safe at home or somewhere secure. So if you lose the one key, you still got the backup key. Passkeys, they say, are a more convenient and safer alternative to passwords. They work on all major platforms and browsers. And this is the mechanics. Allow users to sign in by unlocking their computer or mobile device with their fingerprint, face recognition, or a local PIN. So now it's a passkey in the sense that device is like a security key. It's the passkey.
And I guess the transition from old device to new device will be fairly seamless as long as you still have your original password.
Yeah, so when I set this up on the iPhone...
Oh, that's a good point.
Well, when I set this is a big issue. When I set this up on the iPhone, Google said, okay, your iCloud Secure Enclave now has the key. So that's up to Apple now to give me a way to migrate that. And I don't think I think this is a little complicated, to be honest. I think Apple will let you export it to or move it to another Apple device, but I don't think they have a mechanism for moving it to an Android device. Now, I don't. Yeah, right. And forgive me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, please correct me.
They will.
Yeah, no, I know. But we've been talking about this. No, this started months ago, right, with Apple's announcement and Google's announcement. And we've been talking about it in security now. We've talked about it on this show, and it's still a little fuzzy. It says, unlike passwords, passkeys can only exist on your devices. Again, this is Google. They cannot be written down or accidentally given to a bad actor. When you use a passkey to sign into your Google account, it proves to Google you have access to your device and are unable to unlock it. Together, this means that passkeys protect you against phishing, right? Because a bad guy doesn't have your device or the passkey. And any accidental mishandling that passwords are prone to, such as being reused or exposed in a data breach. So that's the good news. This is stronger. This is what Google says, and I don't know if I agree with this. This is stronger protection than most two-factor methods offer today, which is why we allow you to skip not only the password, but also the second factor when you use passkeys. In fact, passkeys are strong enough they can stand in for security keys for our advanced protection program. That's quite interesting. That's the program Google offers to members of Congress and other high value targets. To extra protection, you have to have 2 hardware keys. It's a very, you lose a lot of functionality. So this is, I guess, if you believe all this, this is good. Creating a passkey on your Google account makes it an option for sign-in. This is important. Existing methods, including your password, will still work in case you need them. For example, when using devices that don't support passkeys yet. So really, you could still fail back to the old way. Passkeys are still new, and it will take some time before they work everywhere. However, creating a passkey today still comes with security benefits, as it allows us to pay closer attention. Oh, that's interesting, to the sign-ins that fall back to passwords. So maybe that's a signal. Maybe this isn't the most secure. Maybe we should take a look at this. Over time, we'll increasingly, now this you could take 2 ways. Over time, we will increasingly scrutinize password logins as passkeys get broader support and familiarity. They're kind of, in a way, doing what Google often does, which is, we are so anxious that you move to this more secure method, we're going to start deprecating or being suspicious of the old method.
Right.
And they are clear. They say that Google does not in any way get access to this information. And I think that's the case with Apple as well.
When I first saw this news, the first thing that came to my mind was, if I go to log into my Google account on a different laptop here at the house, it does the little send the notification to
that's the
device.
single sign-on thing. Yeah.
And I'm like, dang it. And it always sends it to some other device. You have
to get up
never
and go
to the phone that's right here.
So Apple gets heat for doing the opposite. It sends it to every device, including the device you're using to log in at this moment.
Right.
It says, is that you? Yes, it's me. So I don't know what the right answer is on that.
Good security, Ant, means you have to walk around your house.
Exactly.
I'm like, dude, man, that thing's in the car and it's sending it to the car. And, it's
other
annoying.
thing about passkeys is you can create a passkey for every device. So you can, in theory, have a passkey on all your devices, so you don't have to go up and get any device.
Okay. Well, that I feel better now.
In addition,
Scooter X says,
go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
He says that you'll be able to store, manage, and use your passkeys in 1Password, which would help with the moving from device to device. I don't know if that
1Password has announced support for this. I imagine all password managers will eventually. There's a little caveat there, because
I was about to say, if we're still into the password.
Yeah, well, of course, this is their way of staying current. But how do you get the passkey into 1Password? Since it's living in my secure enclave on my phone, this requires Apple to allow you to export it. And currently, they don't. They allow you to move it, but not export it. I don't know. There's a lot of questions. This stuff is brand new. For example, if you create, this is again Google. In addition, some platforms securely back your passkeys up and sync them to other devices you own. For example, if you create a passkey on your iPhone, that passkey will be available on your other Apple devices as long as you're on the same iCloud account. That's why they call it an iCloud passkey, because it's stored in the secure enclave in iCloud. This protects you from being locked out of your account if you lose a device. And it makes it easier for you to upgrade. So when I get a new iPhone, in theory, the passkey is in the cloud and will be passed over to that. I think that still lives in the secure hardware enclave on the device, but I think it's copied from iCloud somehow. If you want to sign in on a device for the first time, a new device, or temporarily use somebody else's device, you can use a passkey stored on your phone to do so. You want to know how? On a new device, you just select...
I don't know, because I'm left out of it, but go ahead.
So your Pixel isn't on your personal account?
My personal account is my Google work account, because that's how I could use Buzz Machine.
Got it. On the new device, you just select the option to use a passkey from another device and follow the prompts. That's interesting. So that's more like what you're used to, Ant, where you sign into Google and then it says, "Oh, go get your Pixel."
Yeah.
You can manually tell it, "I want to do that," but it doesn't. This does not automatically transfer the passkey to the new device. It only uses your phone's screen lock and proximity. So you do have to go get it and put it next to it. I guess it's using Bluetooth LE or something to approve a one-time sign-in. If the new device supports storing its own passkeys, we can then ask separately, "Oh, you want to make one on the new device?" So eventually, I guess the premise is all your devices will have the passkey.
Yeah.
on it, right?
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I just have this vision you kind of brought up, Andy. If your car is working with this and you lose your phone and you can't get in your car to go home to find the thing in your locker at home to turn on the phone to get the car going, and then you're screwed.
So this is the Passkeys. This is you could show this. This is my Passkeys interface. So I had already, unbeknownst to me, basically had Passkeys. Android devices automatically create passkeys for you when you sign in your Google account. So my Galaxy S23 Ultra, for some reason, has 2 passkeys, as does my Pixel 7. And then this is the one I created this morning, the iCloud keychain. And then I have, and it's in the same space, these are YubiKeys. These are the hardware keys. So
any of those will work?
These are all considered passkeys. So in effect, and I think this to me makes sense, your phone is like a hardware key. It's like a YubiKey. And that makes sense, right? And it has the same caveats and concerns. Don't lose it.
A lot of people don't have YubiKeys. So.
Yeah, and this is easier than YubiKey.
Much easier.
Right. And unlike a YubiKey, I do have one YubiKey that has a fingerprint reader on it, but it doesn't work very well with anything. Don't. So the YubiKey fingerprint reader, it's if it doesn't recognize your finger, then it locks itself out, and you have to launch the YubiKey. It's not a good solution. So in a way, this is better because it is biometrics as opposed to just physically having the phone. The phone also has to biometrically recognize you.
Right.
So I guess it is more secure. I mean, I'm sure Steve Gibson will talk about this on Tuesday on Security Now, but we've talked a lot about passkeys and the problems exporting passkeys. One of them. There's no guarantee that Apple will let you export your passkeys for use on Android, for instance. But I'm glad. I'll tell you what, Google doing this is a big story because this opens the floodgate. It's been around for months, and a few sites have done it. Most of the websites that support passkeys took a shortcut and used a third party,
of course,
to do the passkey, not their own servers. And so there's some question about whether that's...
How many banks do you see on there?
Oh, none. No bank's ever going to do this. Best Buy, Dinero, DocuSign, eBay, Google Now, Kayak, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Okta, that's a security company, PayPal.
Oh, there's PayPal.
Yep. Robinhood.
That's like a bank.
Shop
I see pastry there. I think it's going to be
Shopify.
a pastry company, but it's not. It pisses me off.
Pastry.
Everything pisses you off today. Babe.
Yeah. And the
does.
funny thing is it even has a cake icon as its logo.
That's just wrong.
That's mean.
That's just wrong.
Virgin Media,
Worst
the
branding
World of
ever.
Hyatt, Yahoo Japan, not Yahoo anywhere else, because that's separate companies.
Different
And
company.
Zoho. I don't see any. I don't see B of A. I don't see Chase. And you know what's
Well, I
sad
asked
about
because banks still do bad with just regular 2FA. A lot of banks are still sending out SMS.
Yes.
SMS for 2FA instead of.
And the reason they
using
do
some
that is
other-
because they have those normal people that you keep talking about, Ant, that can't figure this stuff out, understandably.
Yeah.
And they understand getting a text message with a code. And so banks are not going to get rid of that, even though they know it's less secure, because they don't want to handle the complications of. If I could find a bank
Those
that
tech
wouldn't
support
do
calls.
SMS, I would do it. But as far as I know, every bank does for that reason. Anyway, you can see there's only 41 sites right now that support passkeys, including Google, Microsoft. Even Apple doesn't. And here's the 1Password passkeys demo. And then this is where you can vote for passkeys support. These are the companies that don't yet support it. Apple, Amazon, Netflix, LinkedIn,
Give 'em a
YouTube,
nudge.
Disney Plus, Steam, Spotify, Twitter, Reddit, Discord, Instagram, Facebook, Airbnb, HBO Max. None of these supported. Adobe, Venmo, Booking.com, Proton Mail. But you can vote for it.
Wouldn't Apple in particular be for this? Considering how they're always.
Oh, yeah, they're right
sort of
behind it. Oh, absolutely.
touting everybody about how bad their security is versus Apple security. It seems like
I
they
think
would be
that's
first
why
in line to make sure this is a go.
I think they're watching what happens with Google.
Oh,
It was
okay.
one of those after you, Alphonse. No, after you.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
let Google get, and it's right for Google to do this, I think. Let them get all the
Yeah.
complications and the complaints, and make everybody feel better. And then I think Apple and Microsoft will do it. Microsoft already has a
Jeff
single
Jarvis
sign-on.
rants.
Yeah. Jeff Jarvis rants. So 1Password is one of the big companies that does this back-end support. So a lot of times when you go to a site and they're doing passkeys, they're not even doing it, which I'm not crazy about. So
I don't know. I mean, do you really want Best Buy handling your passkeys?
Right. Well, in theory, it would be good because, I mean, all that would be is authentication for their site. It wouldn't give you but now because a centralized thing would have passkeys for a bunch of places, that's more concerning.
Well, but because if it's stored in a secure enclave on your device, what is someone like Best Buy actually implementing? Just the encryption, like the PKI, to get the secure authentication between your device and their, like,
I don't know if it's PKI, but I think it probably is something like PKI. So they have something on. They have your public key, and you have your private key, and they make sure that they enter. I'm sure it's something like that. I'm sure it's not like they have everything.
Okay, yeah, because I'm just like, oh man, because I look at all the vendors who I have to give like passwords to and whatnot, and I'm like, and they lose them all the time. I'm like, I don't know if I want something biometrically attached to me out in the world.
That's why I feel like only a hardware vendor with a secure hardware enclave should be allowed to hold private keys, right?
But you mentioned that it could be stored in iCloud, which is a server.
Well, they call it the
else.
iCloud. Yeah, I don't know. They call it the iCloud key. I don't think it is. My understanding is it's stored in this secure hardware enclave on my iPhone in hardware. But were I to get another iPhone, Apple would handle the transfer from this or the copy from this to the new iPhone. But I think each device has its own secure hardware enclave with the passkey. I don't think, despite the name iCloud, it is stored in the cloud. It shouldn't be. It should never be in the cloud.
Okay.
That you're right.
Well,
that would be awful.
because when you said that, I was like, there's no.
That's what they call it.
There are secure enclaves in the cloud, but
that was the story last week. Was that you were able to move these things to the cloud.
Okay.
This was the big question that came up when Passkeys came out, and Steve and I talked about this. He is adamant there is no company as yet allows you to export it to another company's. You can't go from Apple to Google or Google to Apple. You can go from Apple to Apple to Apple to Apple.
Passkeys check if you have the private key locally. No third-party service has it. Okay.
Right.
And so what's in the cloud is just going to be a way to check if you have it.
In iCloud Keychain, passkeys are end-to-end encrypted so even Apple can't read them.
Right.
And this is Apple.
So it's actually in Keychain, or iCloud Keychain.
Right.
Oh, but then you have to turn iCloud Keychain on, which is a suck, because then you've got to enable all the cloud stuff associated with Apple, which is also a suck. I know you have to do it if you're using an iPhone, but I don't, and I don't want to do it on my iPad.
Right, and so you're going to use some sort of Samsung solution. They have that, Knox enclave. I think it's going to be very similar, but the question is, can Knox talk to iCloud and Google? And my understanding when we talked about this before is Apple has implied that maybe there'd be a way to export it, but they haven't yet done that. That there is no way to export it to some other platform. And I understand for security reasons, you probably don't want that, right? You want to keep it tied to your hardware. And it's convenient for Apple because then you really don't want to get an Android phone. You just want to, and Google's
That's
doing
what it
the
sounds
same thing.
like.
Yeah, Google's, but they can justify it, right?
Buy an iPhone.
I think, frankly, as much as we lauded this and as much as we know that passwords are terrible, this ain't the solution. And Steve, who created his own similar but better solution called Squirrel some time ago, spent 7 years working on it, has pointed out That was really the problem because he was supposed to be working on something else. and he went to scroll. So I don't know if he did it on purpose. But Steve did develop something that he says technically is better, but it's Steve Gibson's solution, not Microsoft, Apple, Google's solution. So I think it's just kind of a non-starter. And honestly, he says, and I think he's right, Passkeys is not as good. But remember, we always make these, just like the banks, these trade-offs between real security and convenience.
So not as good.
Well, not everybody needs real security. I mean, like that's the other thing to think about. You gotta assess your risk profile.
Right. You want to protect. Look, if you use Gmail as your main mail account, you want to protect your Google account a lot. You want to do whatever it takes. That's why I have a YubiKey.
Yeah, that's why I have multi-factor and a YubiKey.
And if I could, but I can't, because Google won't let me. If I could, I'd turn off everything but the YubiKey. Maybe they will let me. I haven't tried. I would turn off everything but the YubiKey. And maybe
they just don't want you to call if you use it.
Yeah, that's right. It's the same reason they don't do end-to-end encryption on Google Authenticator. Remember last week we had the story, Steve Gibson was talking about this as well. The Google Authenticator will now synchronize between phones, to which a company called Misk pointed out, yeah, but that's not encrypted. So, and Google said, yeah, that's intentional because we don't want a lot of phone calls about I lost my secret keys. This is always the equation.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at Twit.tv. That was This Week in Google 714, talking about Google Passkeys. So a lot of smoke on this stuff. And I guess just the bottom line is passkeys are a password so long and random that you would never be able to type it in anywhere. And so the protocol just simply doesn't allow that. It's, this long random bit of key noise that's stored on your device and often protected with a simpler password or biometrics that decrypts this essentially. Okay, so you have the super long key that you're ultimately going to use. You put it on your phone and you encrypt it with a key that is either accessible by biometrics or some simpler key that you type in. But all that key does is unlock the local data store, which has the passkey in it, which is ultimately what you use to sign in someplace. So that's a far sight different. Plus, if it's kind of the public key infrastructure thing where you have a private key and a public key, then the passkey that you're storing on your system does not exist on the server. So it can't be stolen and recreated by someone else who cracks into the server. All they can get is a bunch of public keys, which tells them nothing about the associated private key. So that's another one of the big benefits that isn't talked about very much, is you're not giving the server any secret that can be betrayed. All someone could do with a copy of the public key is if you tried to log in with them, they'd be able to authenticate you, which never happens. So, they could put something in front of the real so-called server and authenticate with you that way. But then they in turn would need to authenticate with the real server and they wouldn't be able to. So this isn't even useful for a man-in-the-middle attack. Anyway, this is coming. I think one of the fall downs with this is that it's being offered as an additional thing on top of what you've got. And when you do that, you're simply expanding the number of ways to access a system. In one sort of theoretical way, your security is going down. Because, if you have one vulnerability, it's like the attack surface thing. The more places that you can be attacked, each one just adds to the threat. Even if it only adds to it like, once in a universe of molecules or something. It's still theoretically adding to it. Now, on the flip side, anyone monitoring you, even if someone was, looking over your shoulder with a camera or something. Okay, they might be able to intercept your ability, the password you're using to get into your data block. But that still doesn't do them any good unless they physically acquire your phone. So they need to have your password and or biometric plus your physical phone, and then they could attack a system. And that's the only way they'd be able to get in. Now, by leaving the passwords in place, that's always another way to get in. So, they can still, if you're doing password reuse where you're using the same password on multiple sites and some password gets in a list that is captured by hackers and decoded, then they can go around and start trying that password on every large service, which is called credential stuffing. And then it won't matter that you've gone to Passkeys because you made your old password vulnerable. So I suppose if nothing else, if you go to Passkeys, that's an opportunity also to change your password to something really long and unwieldy and random. You can still, write it down somewhere, put it in your safe deposit box or whatever. But now you can say, okay, this isn't being reused anywhere else, and it's not going to be guessed by random guesses because it's too long and random. And effectively, then and you don't use it anywhere where what you do can be seen. Okay, now Passkeys is the only way to get in, and that's a good thing. So your old password could still be a good backup because it is something that is portable. You may have a hard time getting a passkey from one device to another, but anywhere you can still use a password as backup and use it to generate some new passkeys. And it is nice that you can have multiple passkeys associated with an account. So, each phone or tablet or computer or whatever that you want to use can have its own passkey. And if that's ever compromised, you can log in with one of the other systems and disable that one key and still keep it accessible to everyone else, all your other devices. So there's some good possibilities here, but it is a little different. And every time you change things, there's all sorts of opportunities to scam you, to confuse you. And it takes a while to develop intuition for a new way of doing things, because intuition is based on your experience with a certain field. And anytime we move into a new field, that means that we're vulnerable to being scammed. So be extra cautious when you make these changes. And again, always make sure you're the one who is initiating a request for help and you're not just having some advice pushed on you like, hey, type in this phrase at your command prompt. And it's like, no, that's going to set up a reverse shell and let you into my system. It's like, I'm not going to do something that is pushed on me by unknown parties and possibly, take advantage of my ignorance of what it is I'm actually doing. So same thing with dropping USBs in a parking lot that have hacks on them. It's like, don't plug a strange USB into your computer. It can, if nothing else, it could, imitate a keyboard and start typing random commands at things, malicious commands. Heck, some of them now, they made some things that look like USB memory sticks, and they are actually have a capacitor that when they connect to something, they discharge, 1 million volts into it and destroy it. And just as, a kind of a prank. I guess any unfortunate activity like that could, somewhere along the line, someone can figure out how to make it part of a chain of attack in something that will net them some money or something else that they're looking for. Could just be revenge. All right. With that, let's move on to another topic. This is another clip from the good folks at twit.tv. This is This Week in Tech 926, voice cloning.
This is Twit.
AI as a fundamental concept is in startup mode, right?
Yes.
They're in go fast, break things mode.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Is that risky?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, as long as it's not steering my car, I guess.
What if it's steering an election?
Yes, that's the worry, right?
What
that's
if, what
you
if
hit it on the head?
What if the results in 2024, I don't mean like AI will vote, but AI disinformation might prove.
It sure can influence.
Yeah.
It has the power to influence.
Did you guys see the Joanna Stern video in the Wall Street Journal where she
cloned herself,
her voice?
Yeah,
she fooled her bank, right? I think Joseph Cox at Motherboard did that as well, and they were able to fool banks. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I worry about in the short term, is like just a serious increase. I told my mom that like we have to have a safe word, because if you think I'm calling you, like ask the safe word, because I feel like
she fooled the bank and her family.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of stuff, that's what I'm really terrified about. Like, I feel like disinformation sometimes can be sort of a nebulous concept. And like, what do we mean? What does it look like? Right. Like, I'm not saying that it's not a danger, but when you see that kind of thing, it's like, okay, if they can get into your bank account, it's sort of game over.
I mean, but social engineering has existed for a long time. People have been playing tricks on banks and other institutions for a long time. So I think what all of this leads to is just we need better security across the board against malicious actors, whether they're humans or AI or a combination of those things. Stuff just needs to be more secure, and maybe AI will bring us there. Maybe that will be a good thing, good outcome out of all this.
When you combine the potential, that what we mentioned at the beginning of this, where we were talking about the reviews and all the review spam and everything, take the malicious intent of those folks with the power of AI and someone who knows social engineering, who would typically be a human who is trying to social engineer their way into your bank account. Now back that up with AI. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Right. Like, that's extremely powerful. It's learning, it's taking a brief few minutes to Google everything it could possibly about you and come up with much more solid guesses about any possible security question answer, right? Just in an instant, potentially on the fly as the call is happening, right? That's dangerous, right? Yep. We need much better. I mean, everything should be two-factor, even when they're talking to you on the phone. And I don't mean like some companies try to do a second factor to add security, but I've lost count how many times I didn't have my second factor, for example, to make changes to like an AT&T account or something like that. And you add the PIN code, but then if you don't know the PIN code, they can just turn it off right there on the call for you, right? Maybe they ask your birthday or something. So that it doesn't, it didn't do any good. Right. It's certainly not going to get the better of an AI trying to get in.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, I know.
We're in deep trouble.
It's real depressing.
This got depressing fast.
But. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it means that all of the people on the other end of those transactions need to be on the bus, right? They need to have the competing
which they're not.
AI.
I mean, I remember when Charles Schwab said, "Oh yeah, you can use your voice to log in," and I thought this doesn't seem like a good idea. Well, now we know it's not, right? Terrible idea. Do you have safe words, Yanko, for your family?
I don't know if you want to go there.
I actually talked to my daughter.
We might all have them.
No, I talked to my daughter about this. I said, if you hear from me, and so we worked out a scheme. I don't want to say too much about that, but
don't give up the password to your luggage, Leo.
I do have to tell a story. A couple of years ago, something happened to me that no AI was involved in this at all, but I got a call. I had an LA number at that time, and it was a scam call. But somebody pretended to be, somebody pretended that they had abducted a family member.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And basically, somebody was screaming in the background, calling my name. And I could figure out really quickly that it was not real because I wasn't living in LA anymore. They didn't know the name of the family member, which was sort of an important detail in a hostage negotiation situation. But I just imagine at the time, for people who may be coming from countries where abductions are more common, or are just in different situations where that could be a real situation. So that could be really crazy. And now you add AI to it, obviously it gets even scarier when the voice now sounds like it as well. And I think there was stories about that recently too, where people have been using the very same scam, but with simulated voices.
It happened to one of our regulars on our shows. Larry Magid last week published this article in the San Jose Mercury News, How I Nearly Fell for a frightening virtual kidnapping scheme.
Oh my God.
20 minutes of terror. Now, this is a guy, by the way, who's as technical as we are. He actually is the founder of an online safety organization, connectsafely.org. He said the call felt real to me and threatened to separate me not from money, but from someone. It was his wife. They used a simulated voice. He says, it began Tuesday morning when my wife drove to San Francisco to visit a friend. Most days she and I are together at home or she's somewhere nearby. He says, I was already a little nervous because, the last time she drove to San Francisco, she was sideswiped by another car. 12:37, my cell phone rang with a caller ID that at first glance looked like it was my wife. I now know it wasn't exactly her number. Same area code, same prefix, same last number. So it was all but 3. At the time, oh, that's her, because he was worried, right? What I heard was a crying, upset woman. I assumed it was my wife because it came from her phone. This happened to him last week, by the way. I repeatedly asked what the matter was, but I couldn't understand her answer. All I could imagine was something horrible must have happened. Then a man came on the phone, identified himself as a police officer. I'm telling, this is worth reading and knowing about and telling family members about to understand this scam goes on. He said, I'm a cop. I need to verify who I'm talking with. He said, well, normally I'm going to refuse a request, but I felt desperate. I gave him my name, my wife's name. He then admitted he wasn't a police officer, but a member of a drug cartel.
My God.
Now,
this is a nightmare.
This is a nightmare. And I know Larry. He's sharp. He's like us. He's not going to fall for this stuff. And said that he had my wife with him in San Francisco. I don't know how. He says he knew she was in San Francisco. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he said something about her location. Maybe not. I wasn't thinking clearly. A security expert I spoke with later explained the technique. Start with fear. Follow with an authority figure to gain your trust, the cop, and then pivot to the threat. I mean, this is like a pattern. He says, it worked with me, even though I pride myself on critical thinking skills. There was enough information to cause me to worry it could be the real thing. Either way, I knew I was dealing with a criminal. So while I had him on my cell phone, he at least did this. I put him on speaker and dialed 911 from my desk phone. I didn't say anything to the 911 operator, but knew they would hang on and listen to the call. At one point, the caller told me she'll be okay. Just bring $5,000 to a Walmart parking lot in San Jose. I found out later the 911 operator put my local police on the line, so they heard nearly the entire call, including the ransom demand and the threat. He told me not to contact anyone, asked me if I was alone. I said I was. At one point, the 911 operator asked me for my wife's phone number, which I whispered into the desk phone. The scammer heard me, asked who I was talking to. I denied I was speaking to anyone, just said I was talking to myself because I was nervous. He then asked me to get in my car. I didn't, but kept him on the phone as long as I could. The car request was to initiate the next step in this, the compliance process. Once you follow one instruction, you're more likely to complete the process and pay the ransom, right?
So do they actually want them to go to the Walmart parking lot?
Yeah. Yeah. He says we spoke for over 11 minutes. He finally hung up on me, probably because he realized I wasn't going to comply. So anyway.
Well, even though he initially fell for it, that is extremely quick thinking to call 911 on another line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, again, I would say Larry is no more vulnerable than any of us here. He's savvy, right? So the police came to his house. The officer said it's likely a scam. He did say, call your wife. There was no answer. He called again and she answered. She's fine, never in danger. The police had texted my wife and they contacted SFPD to dispatch an officer to look for her. So they took this very seriously.
Wow.
So
was she just blissfully unaware driving to San Francisco?
Yeah, she had no idea, right? So
this article
needs
to be like a public service announcement.
Yeah, well, he put it in the San Jose Mercury News. I encourage people read it. I guess they didn't. It wasn't really an impersonation of his wife's voice. It was just a scared female voice, but it was enough and it was close. They knew something about him, and this is, by the way, one of the things that's really scary these days is there's enough information out there with data brokers and elsewhere. Bad guys are able to learn enough about you to really kind of fool you. They almost knew his wife's phone number. Somehow they knew she was in San Francisco or guessed she was in San Francisco. We had a scam happen at work where somebody impersonated our CEO and sent him messages to everybody, not to me, but to all the employees, all her direct reports. And fortunately, our staff was smart enough they didn't do anything about it. But I can imagine what the next steps would have been. And this is because somehow our company structure, our corporate structure, the names of our employees, their emails or phone numbers, and Lisa's email and phone number were available to a bad guy who then was able to implement that attack. This is how spear phishing happens now. This is very scary stuff. And
spear phishing is a tale as old as time.
Well, and for a long time, I still kind of feel this way, like I don't have any privacy, fine, so what? What's the worst they can do? Well, now we're starting to see that maybe privacy is important for security, if nothing else.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at twit.tv. That was This Week in Tech 926, talking about voice cloning. So yeah, we've had several different variations on this for a while of this technology. I remember one called Describe, where you could it could do voice to text and also let you edit the text and create new voice. So if you say there was a fire downtown at the such and such building at 5 o'clock, and then you later on found, it was actually at 4 o'clock and something else happened at 5. So you could go in and just replace the 4 with the 5, and it would take a synthesis of your voice and make that change in the audio. It's saving you a lot of editing, re-recording and doing new stuff. But in order for that program to do that, you had to go through this lengthy training process of reading this script. And part of that was just to keep you from imitating someone else's voice, because you needed to train, you needed to have them say very specific things that you wouldn't normally be able to get by just recording them. And I think it changed each time, so you couldn't just go out knowing what the prompts were going to be and get that voice samples. It's like, you find out on the fly you need such and such voice, and I could suppose that it had, theoretically could have a time limit on it as well. So by the time you edited together the right words from somebody, to fake the training process, it would say, that's no longer valid. So in essence, for that to work without the person, you'd have to already have an AI copy of you'd already have to have a voice clone of them in order to train this other voice clone. But a few months ago, I believe someone started putting out samples of a system that could get a pretty good approximation of a voice with just like 3 seconds of training of just anything. It didn't even have to be a specific phrase. You just get a 3-second snippet of someone talking, and now it could do a credible imitation of their voice. So we had these social engineering attacks, these virtual kidnappings, which is to say, a faked kidnapping that didn't even require that you fake the person's voice or know anything specific about them. You just, if you're saying wife or daughter or whatever, on the assumption that they have one, you don't even need to know that, because, a good percentage of the population is going to have a daughter. And, if someone hangs up at that point, you just go on to the next phone number until someone, hears all this weeping in the background and thinks maybe that is their daughter. And, starts going along with this stuff. So, yeah, there is a psychology to this, but it starts with fear. Usually someone that is trying to manipulate you will start, and this includes advertisements, corporate America. First, they make you afraid of something, and then you're more open to grab onto whatever solution is put in front of you. So if that's drive to Walmart parking lot and, give them a gift card, give a gift card to a courier there or whatever, it's like, okay. And that person that's picking up the card, they probably don't even know what's going on. They just, went to TaskRabbit or something and said, hey, go to this lot and pick this card up from this location and drop it off at this location. And then someone who's actually an operative can go do it. Or, even say, I'll tell you where a gift card is and you PayPal me, 50% of the money or whatever. And someone would just at random would say, oh, okay, sure, I'll do that. Very nasty. All right. What do we learn from this? Well, like a lot of things, technologies have upsides and downsides. And the upsides is things like the new iPhone is supposed to, or the new iOS is supposed to have personal voice as a feature, which means you could train the text-to-voice system to do your voice. So if you know you're going in for some surgery that will cause damage or eliminate your voice or just against a future illness, you set this up and then you can talk in your own voice even when your voice isn't working. And I know of, Siskel and Ebert, the one guy, he had throat cancer and, he had this, a lot of damage or removal of his vocal cords. And many, many years ago, using more primitive forms of the technology, they went back to all the recordings of him doing movie reviews over the years. Some engineers did, and they programmed a synthetic voice for him to use that was programmed with his voice. And, he was just, that was a very tearful experience to suddenly be able to speak in what he, with life for a lifetime had identified as his own voice, and be able to speak in that again instead of, kind of a Stephen Hawking's voice of, that kind of speech generator machine. So we also have, things like ChatGPT coming up with compositions, and you feed it a bunch of documents and then it generates something new. So you could say, give a speech on such and such a topic and do it in my voice. Theoretically, if you had this all plugged together, and off it would go. And I don't know if that's a great example. I suppose to someone who stutters or otherwise has difficulty expressing themselves, this kind of technology could be life-changing. But at the same time, it creates new threats and new extensions of the power. And every time that is done, then we need to retune our intuition on defending ourselves and not being fooled by things. So seek out this stuff, play around with it, get a sense of what it can do, and help yourself and your friends kind of become familiar with this, so that when they get some terrifying call like that, one of the first things they think of is this a fake? Because a lot of times the stuff, it's so easy to do without any information. A lot of people just do that rather than going to the trouble of going to a data broker and getting all this information about you. They're just doing the numbers. They're just trying to, crank through as many people as possible, doing this kind of thing. And by the way, another thing that could be automated or further insulated from prosecution is if you're using a fake voice in order to make such a call, then nothing that 911 had recorded on tape could really be used against you because it's not your voice, should they actually find the criminal. So lots to think about, lots of possibilities. And in general, just even contemplating these things can reach out to other parts of your life. If you are thinking critically, if you're paying extra attention to what's going on around you, maybe that's a good thing overall. Don't let it freak you out, but at the same time, don't be anyone's fool. And don't give away when you're catching on to things and how you're catching on to things. Just, start making moves to help your position. Ask them the name of the person that they think they've kidnapped. Ask her to, speak on the phone. Get details. Well, where did you get her from? And to the more degree you take over the conversation or just express, reasonable doubts, it's like, yeah, I don't think she's the person in my life. I don't think she was in that city. So I don't know what you're talking about. I guess these are things we can kind of role play in our heads, and not too much, right? Because This is, as for your information diet, you are what you eat. So don't eat too much fear. Do consider, do ponder, do train, basically things that train your intuition, but don't take your heart. That's going to be the fun phrase of the day. So with that, you've done it again. You spent an hour talking about technology and how a better understanding can lead to better outcomes at home, at work, and in your civic engagements. I hope you'll join us to continue these conversations next Wednesday and every Wednesday, noon to 1 o'clock on Northwest Tech Show.